What's going on, guys? McDowell here. Today we are going to talk about farming strategies generally, and then I'm going to talk about my most recent farming project, which was Legion and Harbinger in Dunes. But I wanted to first sort of go over some stuff that's been on my mind for quite a while. So when I started this channel a year ago, give or take, I think maybe the first video I made where I thought people might watch it was 9, 10 months ago at this point. And throughout the course of that time, I've been thinking about what types of content are going to make the most sense for me to produce in the long term. What types of things can I make that are going to be fulfilling for me, that are going to be interesting or useful to you. And I've had a lot of trouble pinning down exactly what that was. So I've done a lot of experimentation. And given the way that the YouTube algorithm works, and also the other demands that are on my time, I think it makes sense to more hyper-focus this channel on Path of Exile than I have in the last couple months. I've been trying to experiment and throw up some videos on some other games, and that has worked okay for things like Torchlight for the most part, but generally speaking, it seems like the algorithm punishes you pretty hard even if you're just going outside of the main game that you're playing, most of the time, but even within that genre still. And so, given that, I have tried to come up with content that I could make a fair amount of each league that would be useful over time. And I think that analyzing different types of farming strategies might just be exactly the thing that I need for that. And so, what I have done is I've come up with 5 categories that I'm going to apply, and then I'm going to rate different farming strategies by. And I'm going to take those 5 numbers and average them out to create a score. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I think that a lot of the content on YouTube for Path of Exile, particularly when you're talking about how you should be using your time in the game, there is a hyper focus on profit. And I just don't think that's the right way to play the game. And I know there's lots of bigger creators that have said essentially what I'm saying right now, but then they just kind of still do the same content. So I want to try and actually live by that. And so only one of the 5 categories that I'm going to assess these strategies on really has anything to do with profit. So I'll just describe the categories for you, I suppose. The fun is the number 1 for me. And in the past, I think that it made less sense to prioritize that because the game was much more fragmented in the sense that there were only a couple things that you could really do as an average player to get enough currency to make builds that are going to feel good over the course of a league. Whereas now, I think the game is in a state where you can basically pick anything you want, and if you approach it competently, you're going to be able to make enough currency to do the stuff that you want to do in the game, unless you are a player who wants access to the absolute top end. You want a Mage Blood week 1, you want, hundreds and hundreds of Divines in the bank at any given time, you're thinking about mirroring items, you're doing stuff like that, then you might want to focus more on, number 1, content creators that are making content for that, but also in that sense, you're going to need to sort of throw away fun, etc., and focus entirely on how many divine orbs can I click each hour. And so, having said that, the metrics that I'm going to use are fun, and then repeatability, which is not necessarily the same as sustainability. I mean that more in the sense of, is it something that I can continue to do over and over, and it maintains the same level of fun? So, for example, farming beachhead maps, or beachhead, excuse me. I would put that really high up on the fun category if I'm doing one of them or 2 of them. I really like Harbinger, I enjoy the mechanic, so on and so forth, but I would not want to sit and do that all day. And so it would get a much lower score on repeatability. And then the third category is scalability. And so what that means is, are there different tiers of that farming content that you can access based on your mood, based on your character power, based on acquiring new items. If you're farming something and then you buff up your character a bunch, spend a bunch of currency, and then nothing can change in your strat because you've already maxed it out, or you literally can't do anything harder because of some other limitation, there's not some way that you can progress the farming strategy with your character, well, then it would get a lower score on that category. And then profit is the fourth category. We don't want to throw that out the window entirely, but we also don't want that to be the only thing that we're measuring. And then the last category is efficiency. And I struggled to name this one. Efficiency is what I settled on. But what I mean is, how much time am I wasting trading? How much time am I wasting rolling maps? How much micromanagement is there when I'm actually in the maps or in the content doing the farm? And I think that when you, or at least for me, having done this now 3 times, when I apply this scorecard system to these strategies, it actually, it opened my eyes a little bit to a few things that I was sort of subconsciously aware of while I was doing the farm, but then you look at it on paper and you're like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And so I'm hoping that by doing this, I can offer you guys a suite of different farming strategies that over the leagues, you can even look and see, okay, well, so Magdalene really liked Breach in 3.19, and it got better in 3.2, and then in 3.21, it dropped way off. You'll be able to see that progression. But then also, if you're just wanting to come in and say, you know what, I've already got my money, I don't care, I just want to know what's the most fun blasting strat that Magdalen's come up with this week, or that he's played this week. You can real quick just look through my videos, or I'll probably put all the scores for all the strats each league in all the video descriptions. And you can just look through and say, okay, that's the one. Go watch the video for it, see what's going on, and fire it up. And my background is in academic English and writing. And one of the adages that my professors always said to me, you know, through the years over and over was, you should be writing what's on your bedstand. If you're a person that reads fantasy novels every day, you probably shouldn't be writing murder mysteries. And so for me, I'm a mid-range map farmer, and I prioritize fun and the chillness of blasting way more than I prioritize how fast am I going to get my Mage Blood this week. And I know there's lots of people that haven't gotten a Mage Blood before, and that's still a very exciting goal, those big endgame items. I did that, though. And I don't want to just do it over and over and over again. I'm looking for a sustainable, fun, chill mapping strat or farming strat that I can do for several weeks at a time. And I'm hoping that you guys can come on the journey with me for that as I start to, you know, target these different things and rate them. So, having said that, I will throw the first scorecard on screen here for the Breach Harbinger Strand strat that I did a few days ago. And as you can see here, for fun, I've rated that strategy as a 9, and then for repeatability an 8. Scalability, I gave it a 6, profit a 7, efficiency also a 7. And the average there is 7.4. And I think that is pretty illustrative of how I felt. It's a, you know, with 5 or below being trash, anything between 5 and 7 being okay, 7 plus being pretty good, and then, you know, a 9 or a 10 being, this is a strat that you can't miss, you have to play this, it's a blast. I think this is a fair score. I think that as I was doing it, I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I felt like I could do it for a long time. And I did feel like there was a little bit of a limit to how much I could continue to increase, you know, the amount of breaches that were in the map. And you can only put, there's a delirium mirror or there's not, right? Once you're doing it, you're doing it. You can start to get into sextants and stuff like that, but it wasn't the most scalable strategy that I've played, so I gave it a little bit of a lower score on that. And profit was just fine. As I said in the video, I felt like I was making plenty of currency to upgrade my build. I recently switched back to that strategy, and it's still true. I'm still just making enough currency to do the things that I want to do. And then for efficiency, I also gave it a 7 because you can basically do this strategy out can go with stream of consciousness, and it's fun. It's a blast. You can just do it over and over and over. It's great. And there's not a whole lot of micromanagement, even when you're going up into the higher end of the farming capability of the strat, you're not doing a huge amount of trading. You're mostly just rolling your maps up. You've got a sextant going, and you're either throwing breach or domination on the map device, and you're good to go. And now let me throw up the card for the second strat that I did, the Blue Altar speed farming strategy in Crimson Temple, the one that I did 100 maps of recently. And for that one, I've given it a slightly lower score on fun, and repeatability I also gave a 7 in this case. I think they're pretty much equal. I think it is pretty fun, and I think you can settle in and just blast, and that also, is fun. But this was one where the scalability is, I gave it a 5. I could have given it a 4 because you don't want to scale it. You're specifically doing it for the speed. And so adding a bunch more content to it or making it way harder, slowing you down, is counter to the essence of the strategy. And so you can see that as a positive or a negative, because the longer you do this, the more you might desire, well, I wish I could add some stuff to this and have it make sense. I wish I could, have there be more monsters in the map and not just have it slow me down and thus reduce the number of sanctums I'm producing, reduce the number of invitations I'm producing. So it does have that issue. Profit, I thought, was actually a little bit less than when I was doing Breach. And I think it's also a little bit less than when I was doing Legion and Harbinger in Dunes, which I'll talk about next. And efficiency-wise, I think this one was probably one of the most efficient strategies I've ever done, because there's no trading. I wasn't having to mess around with any other players, really, and you're just rolling these maps up, throwing them in the device and going. There's nothing else to it. And so in that sense, having a 9 for efficiency and a 6.5 in profit with the 7/7 in the fun and repeatability, if you're willing to ignore that it doesn't make sense to really scale the thing up. If you just ignored the scalability entirely, you're looking at a higher score even than 6.9. And so I think this is a strategy that I would return to if it was specifically a thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to blast really fast and have a strategy that was pretty fun, pretty repeatable, etc. Now let's talk about my most recent farming strat. So Legion Harbinger Dunes is, for me, by far the least fun of the mechanics that I've explored this league. And the main reason for that is, I know Grimro did a video where he talked about Dunes for this type of a strategy, and I've seen quite a few other content creators essentially say that Dunes is the best layout for Legion. And it probably is in terms of where the monsters spawn. But there's also lots of times where it spawns where, like, the general is, like, basically in the wall, where there's, like, a little alcove. Or there can be these instances where there's a bunch of little walls, little rock edifices that you can't get over. And so you're trying to run around. And there's just a lot of stress farming Legion. Again, maybe if you have a fully decked out character and you're just blowing down everything on the screen, then maybe it changes things. But for me, in the first couple weeks of the league, I didn't have a character like that. And I still really don't. I can't just blow up an entire Legion. And so I had to kind of work at it a little bit. And repeatability, it was okay. I don't really want to keep doing it. And so that's why it doesn't get a 7 or above, because I think it's not terrible, but after about 2 or 3 hours, I feel like the strategy starts to grate on you a little bit. Now, scalability, it is pretty good, because you can go in and add the Legion Sextant, you can throw the Harbinger Sextant on there. You can add more Harbingers with the map device. You can start throwing Delirium Orbs on. Not while you're using the Delirium Mirror Sextant, but you could go the route of dropping on the orbs. You can sort of scale the pack size for the Harbingers. You could go with different Atlas strategies in that sense. So I think this is a pretty good strategy in terms of it being able to grow with you if you're trying to make a character that is going to scale into the big damage, big clear speed type situation. And then in terms of profit, I gave it a 6.5 because if you're running the juice, then it was pretty profitable. But I actually thought it was more profitable if I was just speccing into it and then running it stream of consciousness. So, you know, again, as many people have pointed out, this is very much a league that is centered on Alch and Go type strategies. And so 6.5 I think is fair. So if you're solely going to do juiced versions of this strategy, you're not just doing Alch and Go, then it's definitely the 6.5. If you're just doing Alch and Go, then I would probably say it's closer to like a 7.5. And then efficiency is the killer here. And it's the reason that I gave this, ultimately this ends up with a total score of 5.4. Trading for those Sextants was awful. I could have probably bulk bought on TFT and it would have made it easier, but most folks are not going to go to TFT unless they're going to run a shitload of maps. And in terms of just like buying 4 or 5 compasses and so on and so forth, it was awful. People don't answer. The prices fluctuated pretty wildly over the couple days that I was doing this. Another thing is the incubators. And I know everybody says like, oh, I know nobody likes these, but you got to use them because they'll drop you good stuff. Fuck that. I didn't drop anything from those. And so many of them drop. It's pinging your filter, filling up your screen. You don't want to take them off the filter. You feel like you should pick them up, and then there's no affinity for them in the stash. And so if you are like me and you open your currency tab first and you just use X mouse and drop everything in, everything else just goes in and it's not a problem. The incubators, they fill up your extra slots at the bottom of the currency tab. So you have to have a special tab where you put all of these things. The way that it displays which one is which is not very easy for me to read. Maybe if you have much better eyesight than I do, it's not as much of an issue, but I mean, they're just little tiny icons, and once you've got like half a tab of these, it really gets kind of weird to try and find which one you want. And then you have to go through the process of clicking each one and then putting it onto your items. You can shift click it, of course, but even so, it's, you know how much I hate clicking. And so the incubators really do just ruin it. I don't think they're a good concept. I don't want to have to click anything. If anything, I think a better system would have been just an item that was auto. You know what I mean? You click on it on the ground and it just applies it to your character. And then maybe it wouldn't be an issue, but having to put it in the inventory, deal with getting it in the stash, and then applying them to the character, nope, not for me. Can't stand it. And so, in terms of how to set the strategy up, I did everything from, as I said, just straight Alch and Go, all the way up through having a Legion Sextant, as well as Harbinger and Delirium Mirror, and then I believe for the 4th slot, I was just doing either more monsters or Resonating Shrine. And then I did everything from Stream of Consciousness up through, you know, along with the Sextants when I was running those. I also ran Gilded Legion, Gilded Harbinger, Gilded Cartography, and I think I did a sack frag for the 4th slot there. And so at that point, it's getting kind of expensive per map, and also pretty challenging in terms of what's in the map that you have to deal with. And the Legion monsters, there's lots of them that jump on you, and for my character, that was a pain in the ass. If you have a lot of fizz reduction, maybe not as much of an issue, but when you combine all of that together, the incubators and the having to deal with the layout of the map and the way that Legion spawns, it just kind of becomes a hassle. And I think that is about all I've got for you guys today. As I said at the beginning, I will have in the description below both the Atlas Passive Tree Planner for the Legion strat, and then also information about the scores that I've given for that strat and the other 2 that I did this league, and then also just information about what Sextants I used and all that for the Legion farm. And I have moved into a new build, kind of a side grade, I guess. I've invested quite a bit more, so the character is much more powerful now, but I don't know if I switch to a build that is technically better or worse, but I did do some experimentation with Vol Caustic Arrow, and so I'm going to have a video about that because I think it's fantastic. And there's quite a few little interactions with that skill that I think are really convenient given the current state of the game, so I want to talk about that a little bit, and maybe just show off the build a little bit to you guys. And then I will be back very soon with another farming strat video, where we will take another concept and apply it to my 5-point measuring system, my rating system. And so yeah, if you have ideas for a farming strat that you'd like to see me explore, or maybe I didn't think of something to do with one of these strats that I could have added, maybe I can always go back and do another version of one. I'm not going to limit myself to like, well, I did breach in one strat, so I can never do breach. I'm not going to approach it that way. So any feedback, any ideas that you guys have for different things you'd like me to explore are more than welcome. And otherwise, I hope you found something interesting or useful in this video. And if you did, please do hit the like and subscribe button. And I will see you in the next video. I appreciate you.